Hello everybody, welcome to part 3 of The Wizard. My name is AJ, this is the Mighty Glue Stick, and I thank you for joining me. So, where were we? Having covered abjurers and conjurers and diviners, we're starting to fill in some of the extra-dimensional vaults and chambers in our TARDIS-like magical academy. And it's time to investigate those who beguile, those who blast, and those who befuddle. First stop, the School of the Enchanters. From the raw apprentice gaggle, advanced aptitude and intellectual ability is often sifted out of the crowd by grueling study, strict regimen, and many tests designed to sort those who would be mages from those who would be better suited to other vocations. A few of those tests are designed to identify those with latent telepathic and empathic sensitivity. From these rare individuals, we see the wizards who go on to become the enchanters. What may interest you is that there is a formidable study and theory involved in enchantment, alongside countless hours of practical exercises, normally paired with another apprentice enchanter or a master of the art. If you are familiar with the scene where Professor Snape instructs Harry Potter in the techniques of mental defense, you have some idea of what's involved and how personal this kind of training is. Enchanters not only know the workings of the minds of people and animals, they also know their own mind in a way that few others do. Enchanters can see what a person is when they're consciously deciding to act, and when they are directed to act by an automatic instinct. And they learn psychic methods to engage another intellect and switch that dynamic around. First, however, they learn many of the same basic lessons in spellcasting that illusionists do, and the two schools work very well together, particularly when it comes to manipulating the attention of observers before any magic is actually involved. While the illusionist learns ways to direct the attention away from or to a specific direction they are indicating while they work their magic elsewhere, the enchanter learns to grab the attention and lock onto it, extending their will into the thoughts of others and working their magic there. Illusionists and enchanters both devote years of practice to the art of mental multitasking, of maintaining two or more streams of mental activity at the same time. They do this by a partitioning technique, visualizing areas in their mind's eye and learning how to perform tasks in these areas while maintaining concentration on each in equal measure. This is, as you can imagine, not very easy. It is the equivalent of seeing one of those pictures where it looks like two faces, or a candlestick holder, or a duck, or a rabbit, but the brain can only recognize the pattern of one or the other at a time. Well, illusionists and enchanters see both every time, and they can do a lot more than that. When we talk to someone else, we're listening and seeing what they are describing, and at the same time, we see what we wish to describe and compose the words what we're about to say. So our brains multitask constantly, naturally, and enchanters learn how to do this mental cha-cha particularly well. In fact, enchanters probably spend a lot of time knowing exactly what people are about to say, because the majority of conversations people have on a day-to-day basis are very routine. We call it small talk or pleasantries, and to an enchanter, the awareness of patterns of speech and behavior are very obvious. So ordinary conversation to them will see them responding in patterns they have learned in order to achieve exactly the impression they require from the other person. They do this automatically, and thus it can be very difficult to really know what an enchanter genuinely thinks about anything, unless they choose to forego the stance of perception and tell you directly. Meeting an enchanter most likely seems like encountering the most reasonable, genuine person you've met in quite some time. You feel like they're upfront, in tune with you, personable and trustworthy. Also, they just seem to be able to carry a conversation and get their point across, and are excellent judges of character. Enchanters make a great income through training others in sales techniques, gathering information, performing non-violent interventions, and enhancing political directives. They know what people like and how to convince them that they like what they have to offer. They are also capable of very effectively removing people without having to resort to murder. With a high level of enchanters' ability to remove hours of memory from people they have manipulated like puppets, they can use the worst parts of a person's nature against them and stroll them directly into the very worst consequences of actions that they no longer remember that they performed. The most difficult target for enchanters are those who are completely open, honest, and genuinely passive by nature. But thankfully, these people very rarely are very rare, and normally don't find themselves an obstacle an enchanter is employed to clear away. One service enchanters can perform you might not have considered is mental health treatment for those who have suffered significant trauma. or removal of addictions, compulsions, and restoration of function for minds damaged by other supernatural forces. This is a world where there are magical curses that can seriously mess with people, and often the only way to deal with a magical compulsion is to seek the services of another enchanter to try and counter the effect. Because this skill requires some innate psychic talent, it draws a more diverse range of personalities to it, so there is no alignment more suited to one than the other. The areas of the Wizard Academy devoted to enchantment study is mostly just comfortable armchairs that face each other, along with nooks where enchanters can sit and read or meditate for many hours. They have personal quarters that are kept very private, in which they carefully stock their own possessions, as this is the space they come to relax and let down their guard, to remember what it's like to be themselves. Despite the ability to charm and ensnare other creatures to their service, they prefer to keep their private chambers free from other company and just be alone with their own thoughts. The next school is Evokers. Quite a contrast. You will know when you're in the area of the Academy reserved for the practice of the School of Evocation. There will be target dummies, partially melted rock walls, boulders split by exposure to extremes of heat and cold, the pitted scars of acid sprays, scorched patterns from lightning strikes, and cracked flagstones where thumping implosions or explosions have turned the very air into a hammer blow. Evocation is where most wizards sit up and pay attention in class, where many of them desire to excel, and where a smaller but still significant majority of them will go on to become adherents to the discipline and masters of the arcane traditions of evocation. On the walls of very large rooms put aside for lectures and non-practiced practical learning, there are war banners, tapestries, and relics of many famous battles. There are portraits of exemplary figures from history and public records of spectacular deeds, records, and even competitive standings amongst the students. Evokers recognise that this is a school where those who have driven to win do well, and those who seek means to exceed their own limitations to attain ever greater power become the true masters of the art. And here I'd like to draw your attention to the Star Wars franchise and how the philosophy and practices of the Sith align so snugly with those of the Evokers in Dungeons & Dragons. Also, to make a case for this, look at the ability of the Evoker where they attain it at level 14 called Overchannel, where they can cast any damage dealing spell of 5th level or lower to do maximum damage, suffering no adverse side effects the first time they do this in between long rests. Thanks to years of practice, they have strengthened their ability to channel destructive arcane power. But if they keep doing it, it inflicts serious necrotic damage to them, escalating the more they continue to blast out this power at the expense of their own body rapidly degrading. Perfect example of this, the scene where Supreme Chancellor Sev Palpatine unleashes a continuous force lightning, against Jedi Weapon Master Mace Windu, and the resultant necrotic damage, very dramatically apparent, degrades his body and turns him into the monstrous figure that becomes the Emperor. However you wish to portray the visual effect of this overchannel damage, it's really up to you. Of course, Evokers will normally have plenty of means to cure themselves of this disfiguration, if they can withstand the pain and system shock long enough to apply these remedies. And there are bound to be Evokers who choose not to restore their appearance, however, and see it as a badge of honour to sport the scars of overchanneling as a means to intimidate and perhaps denote their superior rank to other spellcasters. Kind of grisly, but I could see that working. The willingness to put their own body through such torture in order to channel more power gives us a better idea of the mindset of the Evoker. Those who are lawful and use this power to protect and serve accept their sacrifice, and that it may turn the tide of an entire war, break a siege, stop a conflict in its tracks before further lives are lost. The Hobgoblin Warcasters are a perfect example of this, and it shows. They're rake thin, furiously focused, and their terminal addicts and magical destruction is their drug. Chaotic Evokers are the fire starters. They derive pleasure from the destruction, and the evil Evokers enjoy the fear and respect their power brings. Also, evil Evokers may find ways to overchannel and inflict the resulting damage on objects or living beings other than themselves. The result of this can lead to a situation found in the world of Athos, the Dark Sun campaign setting, where sorcerer kings rule despotically over a landscape devastated by arcane corruption. As magical Magic performed there often despoils the life force of the ecosystem unless the casters are very careful. Such practices are forbidden teachings, and those who do know how to do this will see a very swift rise to supremacy within their order, keeping what they know jealously guarded. Of course, that would make an interesting campaign where the evoker within your party is actually seeking out a means to do this, and they have to go into the lair of a famous evoker of the past to acquire this forbidden knowledge. Meanwhile, wizard academies will work actively against them getting this. I shouldn't need to remind you that if you introduce this sort of redirected overcharge damage into your campaign, do so in a way that only lasts as long as the story requires. So expendable artifacts, only applies to willing victims, involves the wrath of elemental lords, that sort of thing. I mean, it shouldn't be something that's around longer than you absolutely need it, because it can very, very seriously overbalance your campaign. The School of Illusion may very well be concealed within the Wizarding Academy. Illusionists tend to gravitate towards the centre of things, where they can remain safe while observing everything going on around them. The school shares many of the same lessons in the early stages as the Enchantment School, but focuses more on the sensory perceptions of others. And illusionists learn the secrets of light and shadow, the way energy and mind interact, and they can practice to expand the amount of information their mind can maintain in a more vigorous way, I think, than any of the other schools of magic. So this is a branch of magic that, like enchantment, is reserved for those with natural talent to begin with. Big brains. I would think that it's likely that those who have proficiency in enchantment but lack the required psychic potential would instead take up the role of illusionists. It's no insult. Minor illusions are tricks of light. The techniques for creating them involve simple, low-energy effects that merely cause light and sound to deflect or pass through screens, fields, and points, the configuration of which creates a magic of images and shapes, colours, and so forth. The mastery of this sort of magic would be very difficult if there were not a magical connection made between the visual cortex of the brain and these calculations, so that the mage needs merely imagine the desired effect while casting the spell and concentrating on the image. Illusionists practice concentration constantly, and the living quarters or study areas of the illusionists is filled with visual puzzle books, geometric mazes, wood blocks that must fit together in a certain way, juggling balls, halfling yo-yos, orc spinning sticks, gnomish fidget spinners. An illusionist, as they gain experience, they incorporate more complex elements into their spells and will know how to cast their voice using ventriloquism, or to do so using a magical enhancement. They can create illusionary skins that overlay unseen servants. So you may encounter cleaners, mute guides, and exotic-looking butlers that walk the carpeted halls of the illusionist residence, performing whatever mundane tasks they were created for, and providing entertaining visual artistry for the wizards who live there. High-level illusionists attain such mastery that they can channel shadow matter into their photonic constructs and make solid holograms, which, if they manage to find the artifacts or willing underlings to maintain concentration, can form entire structures. A good example of this is the gemstone artifact that the illusionist uses in the second classic Conan movie, Conan the Destroyer. And I recommend that entire encounter sequence as a good material to inspire use of a high-level illusionist in your game. And the words of the wizard afterwards are, "All an illusion." Oh, I love that. Illusionists are most likely to know tricks of light, of sleight of hand. They will learn card tricks and can earn a tidy living practicing their art for the affluent and official members of any community. They can provide dazzling displays of rare flowers for a wedding. They can advertise products and events by displaying information and images in public places. They can also screen for areas for privacy. An illusionist is an avid collector of accurate depictions of things, every kind of thing. It's in their best interest to know what an object looks like, what it sounds like. So they're drawn to books with pictures. They can't keep away from travelling menageries of exotic beasts and spend a great deal of time just wandering around, looking at things, talking to adventurers who go to exotic places, taking notes, making sketches, doing the occasional portrait of someone. When not engaged in mystic study, illusionists make fairly good naturalists and probably know a few rangers and druids who they consult from time to time. As an interesting side note and story element, the orc deity Sargas rules over the aspect of darkness, night, stealth, thieves, and the undead. So you might find orc spellcasters who focus on the schools of necromancy and illusion, performing rituals in the darkest nights of the new moon, where piles of stolen goods are sacrificed to their god. These orc mystic thieves will be identifiable by their leather hoods, wearing black and red leather outfits and preferring to work in the cover of total darkness. One would probably not even know that a cult of Sargas is operating in the area unless some thieves were caught in the act and they have a holy symbol depicting a skull over a red crescent moon found in one of them. These would be burglars. Okay, in reply to comments from last video, yes, I'll be covering martial classes as well as these vids on wizards. I have a couple more to do, and I'll talk about some of the monsters that are specific of specific interest to mages after this this short video series. Then I'll continue on with the druid class and also have location videos for my explorers series that I want to get to. Honestly, I could do this job full time. I'd be able to cover so much more stuff. There's just a never-ending range of topics that I have to cover. I will be talking more about artificers and magical constructs in the next video, along with necromancy and transmutation, which are both quite complex and involved subjects, so looking forward to that one. I have a few requests to cover the Dragonborn player character race, so that's also coming up. Thank you, everyone, for all the superb feedback and discussion and all the very, very kind words. Much appreciated. It makes it so much easier for me to prioritize the work that I do when I have a better idea of what you want to see. Have a great weekend. Speak to you again soon. And as always, thanks for listening, everyone.